All right, everybody. It is Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Central, and it's time for our weekly conversations with Commodores. And we got a good one tonight. We got Steve Kosanovich. How are you doing tonight, Kaz? Good to see you, bud.
Fantastic. Visiting you from the land of Chicago, where it's cold and gray, although we did have some sunshine today, so it's all good.
You got that going for you, that's for sure. And guys, if you don't know Kaz, he was a pass catching wide receiver, split end, tight end, H-back. I'm sure there were more titles coming out of Chicago in the class of 85, Coach Mack's last class with Vanderbilt. And there were 6 or 7 guys out of Chicago. So the recruiting coach was extremely busy that year bringing Commodores from Chicagoland. Kaz, did you know any of the guys like Smitty or Gromes or any of those guys before you guys got to campus?
Ironically, I was aware of John Gromos, but Randy Pyle and John Wanzong and I were actually on the recruiting trip the same weekend.
Oh, nice.
So we kind of literally met there. And this is a little untold story that, and the other guys I didn't know till I got down there. But Randy Pyle, we had been on this visit together. And after I'd come and visit, my dad had played football at Northwestern, and I was unsure of where to go, Northwestern or Vanderbilt. And I finally, I actually broke down and committed to go to Northwestern. And Randy Pyle called me up and he said, "Dude, what are you doing going to Northwestern?" He goes, "It's gonna be cold and gray. The girls aren't so pretty. I tell you what, you got to come down to Nashville, and we're gonna have a great time." And he literally sold me and flipped the switch. And then the next day, I called up and I said, "Hey, coach, I got to talk to you. I'm just not feeling right about this." And
what was your dad's thought on that?
You know what? He was with me. He was. We had such a tough time deciding. At the time, you had Vanderbilt, who was they had just gone to Liberty Bowl 6-5, but Northwestern was in the middle of a bad losing streak. And he's like, "Look, go have fun." So it worked out. I think we had a little bit of fun.
Well, speaking of fun, we got Coach Mark Matlock with us. We got Coach Gary Shepard, and we got Doug Bradley's in the house for Kaz tonight.
Omar, cheers.
Omar, that's right. Part of that Chicagoland recruiting class of 85. Kaz, what was it that Coach Mack or whoever was recruiting you at the time about playing time? What was being shared about your potential future role, or was that really discussed before you got to campus?
I don't know. I think they all tell you that you're going to be playing immediately and you're going to be able to do this and that, and you're going to come in, you're going to be our guy, and there was, God, I forget, I think it was Coach Mantooth or somebody, maybe Coach Shepard, who was like, it was a first day or second day of pads and we're going through there, and he's like, "So you got, now you guys know that you got to fight for everything, and like there's no time commitment, and we said you'd be this, but you really got to fight for everything." And he's like, "And by the way, and it's raining down there, it's 8 in the morning, you're all sore, you've been hitting everything." And he's like, "And by the way, your girlfriend, she's dating your best friend." I'm like, "Oh my God, he's right. She didn't answer."
Oh, that's so
I'd say, yeah, you were kind of promised playing time. I had no illusion that I was going to come in and do anything.
Well, that team, the 84 team, had so much talent. They had just beaten Alabama that year. I don't know if you were at that game in Tuscaloosa or not, but I was a year behind you, and I was sitting in the stands when Mark Wohlers and all those guys made such an awesome defensive stand. And growing up an Alabama fan, I hated the fact that my team got beat. Little did I know that a year and a half later, those guys would be my teammates. So I don't know if you had any kind of moment like that watching Vanderbilt your senior year, if that was even in the a thought process for you.
No, it was a little bit of a different time, right? I mean, back in 1985, you had magazines that came out weekly or monthly, right? You had recruiting letters were delivered by snail mail. And, as far as, you started having the game of the week on, with Kirk that was the first thing watching Herschel Walker at Georgia. Like, what's this SEC conference? What's this all about? And then you started hearing it. So there wasn't like intimate knowledge of kind of the rivalries and different things. They were kind of like distant, far off places. Like, oh my gosh, like you can go out of state and go to school there. I mean, it was really just, you have to remember that, like, you to get a coach's phone call, you had to like pick up the phone, right? And you had to be like, and if you missed it, you missed it, you know.
No, I do remember those days. Because I assume you played multiple sports growing up as a kid. Were there other sports that got your attention besides football?
Yeah, little known fact, I was a golfer to begin with, and
Really?
I was caddying, and I always loved the kind of game of golf, which I still do. And another incidental story to that is that like 30 years ago, I was about like a 14 handicap, and I'm still a 14 handicap, or 12. And so one of my buddies like, so over 30 years of playing, you haven't improved. Like, yeah.
Well, you could look at it another way. You're steady. You know what you
Steady,
get.
right? Yeah.
You
I also played basketball. I love basketball and some baseball, but then football was just the kind of best suited sport. Actually had a great high school coach. He's like, look, you can play these other sports, but you're gonna be able to get a football scholarship. And after like 1 year of golf, I'm like, you know what, coach, you're right. Hitting people is a lot more fun than hitting a golf ball.
Well, when were you on the radar of any either basketball or football schools that kind of percolated in your mind that, hey, this may be a doable thing playing in college?
I was, look, like anybody who plays at, a college level, you've got a confidence in yourself that you can play with anybody, whether that was basketball, football, or baseball. And we had a really good team, and it was kind of a senior-led team. And our junior year, you scraped and fought for playing time. I was lucky enough to have a guy whose name was Mark Nigro, who's one of my best friends in high school, who just happened to be like a parade All-American linebacker and tight end. So there were a lot of people who came looking at Mark and then saw me, and they're like, hey, who's this B player? Like this second linebacker, the weak side linebacker, is pretty good. And by the way, he's got really good hands catching the ball. And this is true story. So my dad, when I went on recruiting trips, he's like, you always have to wear a sweater, because you can't show them how skinny you are. Because at that point, like when I was recruited, I was like 6'4", like I said 190 pounds. And that was like soaking wet, that like I was just something that had to be, built out, but had some wheels. I don't know.
Cause that's so funny, because my dad had lifts put in my shoes that I wore on my recruiting visit to Vanderbilt. He wanted me to be appearing at 6 feet tall, of which I've never been.
Yeah.
So
no, Bernie, I thought you were six. I thought you were always a solid 6'1".
No.
It was either 5'9" or 6'1". I wasn't really sure.
We got Darren Rothenberg, we got Tom Fitz, Scott O'Neill are all in the house. Thank you, guys. We got Steve Kosanovich, and we're talking a little bit of Chicago high school sports. Steve, it's you get down to Vanderbilt in the fall of '85, and you're starting when it was back in the time, I assume, freshmen came in a couple of days early than the varsity came in. Oh, we got another Chicago man in the house. Chris Kraus says to tell you hello.
Kraus, what's up, my brother?
Talk to me about the getting adjusted to the humidity in the South. Because that
was quite a change. We had like kind of stifling humidity like in July and in August, right, in Chicago. But by September 1st, it's pretty much largely cooled down. And so when you went down there, I was just amazed. I mean, we used to have to weigh in, I think, in between practices, and I think you'd lose between 5 and 10 pounds of practice, and it was the importance of drinking water, eating sunflower seeds, salty foods, whatever you could do. That was a big change. And that day when they told us that our girlfriends were dating our best friend, it poured that day, and it was like 90 degrees. It was just stifling humidity. But the other thing is, you just learn how to manage it. I mean, you just learn how to walk between buildings to get to classes and jump in some AC, when you're kind of going between classes, right? It was legitimately hot.
Tell me if you remember this, the 6 laps, the 1.5 that we had to in preseason training when you came in, we had, depending on your weight and depending on what your position was, you had to finish those 6 laps under a certain time. Do you remember this training?
Yeah, I actually think that I think Bradley was the only guy from our class who actually made that. Which brings up another story. So when we were freshmen, Meathead, first of all, he comes in with like a mohawk, right? And he was ripped, right? Like, and I'm like, like I'm in pretty good shape. I've been doing all my bench. My biggest thing was that I wanted to throw up 2 1/4, like at least 10 to 12 times to not look like a wimp on the bench. And they had sent us this packet of workouts. You were supposed to do like an hour or 2 hours of workouts every day. And I worked out with Randy Pyle, and we're like, let's do some benches, let's do some curls, go for a little run. We did not do 1/10 of this packet, right? Bradley did every single workout, everyone, maybe even twice, but we were just like, dude, you're a dork, like, what are you doing?
Now, I don't, Coach Bates was already in place when I was there. Was he there or was it before Coach Bates in the fall of '85?
I think he
remember?
just took over as we came in. So I was a full Coach Bates, as Doug will call it, jazzercise workouts.
Oh, Coach Bates, I will say this, he was innovative. He had all kind of different stuff that we were doing. Guys,
Actually, Bradley called it Batesercise.
There you go. I've got Steve Kosanovich going out of Chicago, class of '85. And Steve, I want to talk about the adjustment. You talked about the confidence when you're growing up and you're an athlete, you think you can beat everybody, you're invincible, and you're a big fish in a small pond in your own high school or in your own area. But when we get to Vanderbilt, SEC, best conference, everybody is coming from their best, they're the best from theirs. But talk about that transition, your confidence, and from an athletic standpoint and fitting in with the team. How did that go for you? Your freshman year?
That was it was pretty interesting. I mean, I just going back to that the same practice day where they told your girlfriend was dating somebody else, but it was this all out hitting thing, and the defense was so jacked. And like, I remember like Renford Reese tackled me on the sideline and got in my face, and he's like, dude, you just tackled me. It's like, this is practice, right? But I was amazed at the intensity that was being brought into it. And then you just kind of like, I don't know, you either like met that same intensity or you kind of just welled off to the side. And there were a number of guys who washed out who just couldn't rise to that occasion, right? I think we lost almost half of our 28 players that we had in our recruiting class by the time of our senior year. I mean, I think that was very, guys all of a sudden just be like, they're out. Like, what, either they got hurt or, they just spit the bit out.
Yeah, I can think of 5 or 6 from my class who just didn't cut it through, even through maybe our junior year. But you had the pleasure of being tackled by Marvin Thomas and Armando Fitz and Chris Gaines and a whole
that was
host
really
of
fun.
those guys.
We got to I think it was Eric Longfellow or John Wands and myself. We got to like freshman year when we were like third strings, which meant we didn't play at all. And they're like, we need some fresh legs on the practice squad. They want to go down there for full hitting. And we went down there and like, it was, fight for your life type stuff. Like, you better run hard because they're running really hard and they want to just crush you. And I can remember just coming back and like we had like just these giant bruises on our forehead from getting hit so hard. It was like, but at the same point, you're like, okay, I took it, I could handle it, and let's go.
Bradley throws out a name for you. How about David Draper?
D. Draper, the guy who never wore deodorant. Only pants, did shoulders, no legs whatsoever.
It's been more than 35 years, and that's what you remember about the guy. No deodorant.
No deodorant, dude. He seriously. The guy was ripped too, but like he like
Yeah.
no deodorant. It was just like, dude, that's horrible.
Well, Kaz, who was your freshman roommate? Did you guys live in Branscombe and Lupton?
Branscombe, I think we were Stapleton. We
Mhm.
were like, it was like a 3-story building, as I recall. I think still there. Brad Hendren, Big Bad Brad from Florida, Kissimmee, Florida.
Wasn't he from Appalachian App State transfer, or did he go to App State afterward?
I think he
Somebody
went
will
to App
remember.
State after. He was just he was a tough one. He missed home so bad. He was real homesick and just I think he left after like one or two semesters.
Yeah, I guess I don't know who makes the assignments. Maybe back in the day it was Miss Brothers or somebody in the admin office, but you kind of scratch your head. How do you pair up some of these guys together?
I'm not sure how he got paired up with me. I got to be quite honest.
All right,
I guess
Dino
I
is
had this
going
like
to.
altar boy image or something. I don't think so, but
Denardi just joined us, and he's about to chuckle because he's now going to remember that Brad Gaines and Mark Kubo were originally paired together as roommates our freshman year. How about
oh, is
that?
that right?
How about that, Pearson, right there?
Goober.
Oh, Goober. He was great last week. Guys, I've got Steve Kosanovich. He came in the class of 85, Coach Mack's last class, and there were 6 or 7 guys from Chicago alone in that signing class, a lot of athletic talent. Steve, you were able to play pretty early on, and you were in the mix. You were with Carl Parker and Goo Baby and a whole bunch of talented offensive of players. I want you to take us into the huddle with Eric Jones. You guys were throwing it around, and that was an exciting year. I'm specifically talking about 88, and we're going to go to the Florida game in a minute, but that was such a, to me, and I was always jealous because I was down on the depth chart, but you guys just seemed to be flying around the ball and throwing it around because Eric was such a dual threat, talented guy. It
Yeah.
must have been fun for you to be in the huddle on the offensive side.
I mean, Eric Jones, what a phenomenal athlete, competitor. I mean, he took so many shots running the wishbone and then throwing the ball. And there were, you had guys making catches. We were really doing some unique stuff on offense with the spread option and the different stuff, which is all the premise of today is what they're doing, high-low stretches, the zone flats and everything and what you're doing and the reads and adjustments and so forth. So we were doing all that. It was really exciting. And, Carl Parker and Boo and Everett Crawford, I mean, were all such great athletes. And it was just like, all you wanted to do was, compete. And we had, so many nice guys throwing the ball and, Eric could put the ball there and, you just need to get open. And it was just, fighting for reps and and catches, right? I mean, it was
Here's a fun coulda, woulda, shoulda. You and Eric could have been Northwestern teammates had you committed to Northwestern. You would have been together at least 1 year, maybe 2 years.
that's right.
But yeah, Eric did not care for Northwestern, and we were lucky that he landed in Nashville a couple
Yeah,
years.
and then just it's in Carl Parker, what an outstanding individual. I mean, he was married in college, and what he did, such a hard worker. Which is a work ethic that when you got guys working hard, it just translates to everybody, right? And then guys just making
Absolutely.
catches makes you want to make great catches too.
And is it any surprise to you that he ended up in the Super Bowl a
Yeah.
couple of years later? Well, Kaz, what was it about playing football in college in the SEC for Vanderbilt that you really enjoyed? And as this follow up with that is, what was it that you didn't enjoy about playing college football?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, look, some of the road trips and everything were absolutely outstanding. We were able to play in the Superdome in Meadowlands, between the hedges
Mhm.
in Knoxville. I mean, we played at some of the great places. Granted, we played our fair share of homecomings, but we were able to get some wins. I mean, and it was I just loved being in the SEC and seeing all these fantastic schools with all this history and going to them. And I mean, one of my most memorable moments is the first time we played down in Athens and we come in the buses and, you got the police officers, zooming by in the motorcycles, and they're just, they're all jacked up. They're like going 80 miles an hour. We're running through red lights and everything. And you come into Athens and there's just cars everywhere. And like, dude, what's going on? They're like, yeah, on game day, you can just park anywhere you want down in Athens. I don't know if it's still the same. So then we're trying to, get these buses through it. And then just to go there and have, 76,000 or 80,000 people in Athens going, go Georgia Bulldogs, just amazing. And I'm like on the sideline because Steve Law was from there. We're like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I want to come back here, like, and just watch that, because you hear that people go Georgia Bulldogs, and I mean, it was just amazing. I mean, it was like one of the coolest things. Then you had Hotty Toddy down in Old Miss, right? And we saw the waving wheat in Kansas. So there's a lot of good stuff. Now, actually, I'll go public with another story that not many people know about the waving wheat of Kansas. Is that my roommate was Steve Schutte. And he was from St. Louis. And I don't think anybody's really heard this story, but so Steve Schutte's on the team, and he's like, hey, just so you know, and we were staying at this crappy hotel in Kansas. I mean, whatever town that is. We're staying there, and it was like one of those ones where they've got like 3 or 4 different buildings. And then your door literally opened to the outside. He goes, just a heads up. He goes, my sister's coming at 10:30 or 11 at night after room check. He goes, I'm going out. He goes, you can either come with me or you could stay here. But if you stay here, you got to cover for me, right? And so I'm like, all right, this is quite a choice. Wasn't what I was expecting. Thought I was going to do some studying. So his sister pulls up. We like run out. We went to some bar before the Kansas game. It was called like the wagon wheel or the wheel or something. And we stayed out till like, I don't know, 12:31. So probably the dumbest thing that I did, but whatever. Got away with it till now.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the statute of limitations, I think, we're good there.
Yeah. I still have the panic attacks that I have. There's like still one class that I'm missing at Vanderbilt, and they keep calling me back like, hey, you've got to make up that class because we've got to take your diploma back.
Speaking of panic attacks, I know that you relate to this because we all did this. When before classes started in August, we were going through 2 and 3 and 4 practices a day. We had weights, we had meetings, but we always had a little bit of time to come back to the dorm to get a little snooze in before you had to be back over there.
Right.
How did you make yourself wake up in time? I assumed you took naps, but how did you not oversleep? Because personally, 3 alarms were set just to make sure. And I always woke up before the first one just because you never get a deep enough sleep. And you remember those days.
Yeah.
You don't want to oversleep.
You can be out like in 5 minutes, right? My wife to this day is like, I don't understand how you can fall asleep so fast.
Yeah.
I think it was a combination of, we had an alarm in the room, and even when we were living in towers, we had a single, but I think we kind of all like maybe knocked on your door, as I recall. Like, so you had your alarm clock, right? You knew it took 15 minutes to get over McGugan, right?
Yeah.
And you couldn't be late, right? You had to be there 5 minutes early. And
I remember knocking on Tim Richardson's door, knocking on Gromos, the other quarterbacks. So I just assumed that other positional guys maybe just looked out for each other because you did not want to be late. That's for sure.
No, good point. And then the other thing is just socially how we did it without phones and texting where you're going to be, what you're going to do. And like, we just somehow figured it out, whether it was going to Jonesy's or, the Banditos.
Banditos, which is now a florist shop.
Yeah. Or what was the place? There was you had Satco, right? Just a institution still there. I think it's still serving the same cheese and tacos.
It is.
But then you had the place, there was a crappy bar underneath it, if you recall that.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah, there was.
Wow. Well, if somebody remembers that, shoot the name of it. All right, Kaz, the first part was, what did you enjoy about playing college football? You answered that, but what is the part you didn't like?
Yeah, I think the hardest part was that, we had a job playing football, which a lot of people may or may not have understood,
Mhm,
that you were essentially had a 40 or 50 hour a week
mhm,
job
mhm,
that, you know, however the teacher said they were going to be accommodating to you, they really weren't.
mhm,
Um, you know, you're working 40 hours of hard labor, right? And a lot
mhm.
of times it was probably more like 60 or 65 hours that you were between practices, meetings, and different stuff and travel. I mean, you were gone a lot of the time. You Friday nights were out in the fall, and then you know, you're working your ass off in spring workouts, and that sort of was draining that you kind of didn't have a whole lot of time to be just a regular student, which
Yeah, because a
I
lot of times you wanted to catch it, you had to catch up on your rest, or you ignored it and went out to places like Peppers. That's what Bradley said was the name of the bar underneath.
peppers, that's it. That's a good one.
Yeah. It was hard, but we figured it out. Somehow we navigated through those 4 or 5 years. And
Yeah.
I want to take you to maybe one of the best memories. I want to take you to the fall of '88. We're wearing the ungodly, awful yellow jerseys, but it was a day that is one of the more
Yellow
memorable
orangish.
victories. Say again.
Yellow orangish.
There you go. That Coach Shepard either takes the responsibility or the credit for the win over Florida at home. And it wasn't just a win. I think it was a 24-9. The defense was outstanding. You caught a touchdown pass, and we were on regional TV. I think maybe it was Raycon back then. It
Yeah, or
certainly was
Jefferson
ESPN.
Pilot, something like that.
Yeah, or Jefferson Pilot, one of those. It certainly wasn't ESPN Game of the Week or anything like that. But do you remember that game? Do you remember that day?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I do. It's a standing joke that anybody who brings it up, I give them $20 to bring up that memory.
Mhm.
And then like because Vanderbilt finally beat them after what is that 30, geez, like what is that, do the math here,
Yeah.
35, 34 years that we finally beat them at home this year, which by the way I was in attendance with Brad Gaines and Doug Bradley and Daryl Holt, and it was a lot of fun. It
Oh,
was,
that was an outstanding game this year.
but as far as it's just like I remember it just being a fantastic, beautiful Saturday afternoon, just perfect football weather. And it was like one of those things that everybody's sort of clicking, the offense is moving. We're making catches, we're making plays, and everything's just going right. And we got to the point, I don't know if it was in the third quarter and you know, third or fourth and short, and we run a little like play option 151 with the pass or whatever. Like odd was left. I think it was 151, pass or whatever.
Mhm.
That was my baby. I'm just like, yeah, this is it. Like, dude, just get the ball to me. I'm gonna make this catch. And Eric threw it in the only possible spot that it could be caught, and
Mhm.
made a great catch. Line, everybody did their job, and it was just instant celebration. It was the coolest feeling of my life.
Well, that's an awesome picture of you with Rodney Barrett holding you up.
Yeah,
Big celebratory.
Rodney Barrett. Any idea where Rodney Barrett is these days? Any sighting?
He's in Nashville, still doing his thing. He
Okay,
sure is.
he was
Um,
being buddies with Ward Drennan.
yeah, I saw Ward just recently. Texted with him this week. We're gonna have lunch. He's here in Birmingham.
It's fantastic.
Cause if I remember correctly, didn't we come out in different jerseys for pregame?
Yeah,
And
we
then
definitely
change?
did. We definitely came out like I don't know if it was white or black or whatever. We came back in, and when we went in at the pregame, all of a sudden these cool yellow jerseys that must have been like kid sizes, like they were the smallest jerseys you've ever put on in your life. Um, and they were in the lockers, and they're like, "Okay, boys, it's change them," and like everybody's trying to tug them on, and just getting exhausted trying to change it, put these things on. But it was really a spectacular play. It was
Well,
really,
I
and
feel
it
that
worked.
it did work. It did work. The defense was phenomenal that game. Now, granted, they had an injured Emmett Thomas. I mean, excuse me,
Emmett Smith,
Emmett
no, he
Smith.
played. We knocked him out of the game.
Oh, that's right. That's how
That's a
my memory
misnomer. He
goes.
definitely was there. He was eligible to play. He didn't want to play. He was fearful to play.
That's right.
They also had another guy, Lewis Oliver, who was like and Trace Armstrong.
Yeah. Oh, they had several pros on that team.
Yeah.
Several. But and then Herbert Perry was their quarterback, and he ended up playing Major League Baseball for several years.
Yeah.
Because I feel an obligation whenever comments come in, I have to report them to my guests. Hi, Mom. I love you, Courtney.
Hey, wait, can we do this? Can we do this, Bradley?
Yes, you can. And that's of course put that in there. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, that was Bradley. Hi, Mom. I love you, Courtney. And it wasn't I love you, Courtney, just for the record, Doug. It was hi, Mom, Courtney. I just kind of threw that in there. My dad to this day still is like, hey, thanks a lot for that. When he got on TV, made the catch and left me out.
Yeah.
Still a little sore about that. I kind of blew
Oh,
it.
well, I'm sure you've made it up in other ways. Well, Kaz, away from football, away from all those 50, 60-hour weeks, because it was before that NCAA supposed 20-hour-a-week rule. Oh, hold on. We got Ed Parrish and we got Kevin Brothen in the house for you, Kaz.
Okay, Brothen. Nice.
Hey, Brothen. Hey, Ed Parrish. Happy birthday to you, bud. Hey, Kevin. When you weren't doing football, which we were always doing, where were, besides Peppers, besides Banditos and Jonesies, where else did you find yourself getting in trouble or not getting in trouble away from football?
Well, I appear to find myself in some trouble a couple different times. But we used to love the place Exit In where they had live music.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we would go down there on Broadway and kind of carouse around, listen to some fantastic places at Exit, fantastic music at Exit In. And some of the, the bands that we saw were just amazing. And that was really, and to this day, I still tell these people, I mean, that just made, it was such a enjoyable thing. We saw so many great guitarists and different bands. And I mean, I think Doug Bradley, David Adams, and I, like when we were there in summer school, we went and saw like Jeff Beck perform, and we were like front row. I mean, it was just some amazing stuff that we saw there. And I think it was the King Snakes when we were there, who were just an amazing band who had like were local heroes type stuff. But I really enjoyed the music scene, and I still to this day like it, but nothing compares about paying $5 to go listen to some live music.
Oh, my highlight at Exit In was seeing Stevie Winwood perform by himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even on the billboard. No, he just was there one night.
Yeah, that was the thing, that all of a sudden these guys might come and say like, hey, I love your music.
Yeah.
Like, let's play a set or two. And they would just jam,
Yeah.
just amazing.
And sadly, Exit In closed this past December after however many years they've been open. Rotiers is gone. I mean, so many of these institutions from back in the day.
Yeah, Rotiers, the last time I went to it, did not live up to my savory image of like that I thought it was. But
well, it may be
really good times.
You may not have been in as much of a need for grease at the time you just went compared to years past. Kaz, I want to talk about at the end of your Vanderbilt days, when graduation was coming and your eligibility was just about out, that fall of your last year. And I don't know if you had any aspirations of playing in a professional league, or if you just knew your football days were coming to a close. Did that resonate with you? Do you remember that time about looking forward at that?
Yeah, it was a really difficult time. I was redshirted my freshman year, and then I wound up playing and starting for 3 years. So I had kind of gotten a fill, and I kind of thought that next year was going to be a little tough for the team, just because we had lost so many great guys. And I kind of remember going into the postseason kind of discussion with Watson, and it's like, what do you want to do? And I had this year left, and I was like, well, I think I could be an integral part of the team next year, but I'm really, I feel it's time to kind of move on, right? I gotta start thinking about my career, because I don't know that I want to be like a bit kind of pro player. Like I just never thought that I could be like a fantastic journeyman professional player. I thought like I might be able to play for a year or two, and I get dinged up, and it was like, who knows what's going to happen to your body after playing for 4 years. And it was really kind of an emotional thing that I remember talking to Watson Brown about. And I'm like, I want to do this, but like, I kind of don't want to, I want to be an integral part of the team. And it was kind of sad that he kind of said that he's like, well, he's like, I don't even know if we're going to start. You got Kerry Clem coming up or something. And I'm like, dude, what do you mean? Like, I'm not going to start? Like, I've started for 3 years. And like, now, like, I got to like regain my starting position.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like really frustrated with that. In a way, it was just kind of like, okay, well, if you don't want me, it's like breaking up with a girl, then I'm gone. I'm out of here. And I'll just move on to do my next thing. Now, hindsight, it probably would have been better for me to stick around for a 5th year,
Mhm.
finish up the masters. But I kind of felt that I needed to kind of personally and professionally move on and kind of get away from the kind of football thing, because I felt myself as having a career that I was going to have to like go
Mhm.
on to for 30, 40 years.
Well, at that point, had you ID'd what area you wanted to go into professionally?
Yeah, but it was kind of the same reason how I arose at what I studied mechanical engineering. I'm just like, yeah, I think those guys get paid a decent amount of cash.
Mhm.
So that'd be a good spot, right? And like, as opposed to like making 16 or 18 grand, you make 30, right? Like that's got to be good.
Mhm.
And but then what you don't know, because and I'm going to segue into a good idea,
Mhm.
was that we hadn't really worked in the working world. We maybe had some jobs in the summer. They weren't internships. You really had no idea what it would be to be an engineer in the real world. If you're
Mhm.
lucky, maybe you did. I honestly had no idea. Like, I don't know, it was all textbook engineering, right? Like, this is what you do. It was
Mhm.
no thing about like working on a project and how it comes together. And that's been like one of my little pet things that I've been working on with Vanderbilt. And is trying to get a real good internship program so
Mhm.
that athletes can get exposed to working and understand what it takes in this job to succeed, and that they're successful. And I kind of challenge everybody who's listening to this right now, is that we're senior level people, hopefully around 50, 55 years old, that we've got great connections, and we're the ones who should be talking to these student athletes now.
Mhm.
That because we're the guys who can get them into interviews, we're the people that can get them jobs, and it's really important. And I think that they've started getting the program going at
Mhm.
Vanderbilt, but I've always kind of said, like, you've really got to reach out to the alumni. We've got successful people,
Mhm.
and it's those relationships, those 25, 30-year friendships that are going to help you going forward. Dartmouth does something they call like a 40-year commitment, where they
Mhm.
talk about like, you're not committing to 4 years, you're committing for 40. And I think that that's, a huge differentiator between, Vanderbilt and, other state schools, is that we've got really great people who have been super successful. I mean, look at our guy, Derek Gregg. He's, Northwestern athletic director.
Mhm.
And I just saw him, this past weekend, and met his family. And, it was like, I hadn't seen that guy in 20 years, and it was, 25 years. And it was just like yesterday that we're like, dude, here's what you do on an in route, and here's how you go, and you got to do it, because you got to take advantage of your speed. And like, and he's like, just the same mild mannered gentleman. Is really great to see him.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Kaz, because I know Chris Griffin is spearheading the Black and Gold Club. And one of the things, and it's for all varsity athletes at Vanderbilt, and they have been really making a lot of achievements the last 2 years of growing that alumni network that you're referring to, that offers job opportunities, internships, and mentorships, as well as the Ingram Center for Student Athlete Success. I had Allison Wenzel on a few weeks ago,
Yeah,
and she talks about what they're doing with the current student athletes. So I'm glad at least they have those two programs in place. We just need more alums like you're referring to get involved, to sign into the Black and Gold Club database and make yourself
they
available.
really do, but it's also like, it's got to be a concerted effort. And I've had conversations with Allison
Mhm.
about it, to say like, you got to use our network. For example, in our year, her name's Kristen Lemkow. She's the
Mhm.
chief marketing officer for Chase Bank. And, it's like, to have an alumni at that position is
Mhm.
huge. And you just want the chance to talk to them and just network. I mean, because networking is so important in this day and age, and recognizing the people that and I do know this, that of all the people in all the years, every time I've reached out to an ex-player or kind of alumni friend, they've
Mhm.
always picked up the phone, they picked up an email, they've responded. It's very rare not to hear from it, and I think that's one of the biggest things that we could work on.
Oh, I applaud everything you've said the last 10 minutes, and I just hope that more will follow suit. That's for sure. But we got to get back into your story for a few minutes because I know you got other stories that you got to tell us tonight. I want to talk about your last game, which was also, I think, my last game. That was 89, playing at Tennessee.
Oh, yeah.
Ended up losing 17-10. And if you remember playing at Neyland Stadium, we weren't exactly welcomed like the best friends or the neighbors to the folks in orange. Tell me if you remember this. I'm going to back up 2 years before that. We're up 28-3 at half, and we lose
And
30.
David Adams is standing on the sidelines going like, "What? I can't hear you."
Well, do you remember we ended up having to put our helmets on because they were throwing everything they could find at halftime running into the clubhouse. And I remember Watson and a couple of the coaches warning us, if you're on the sidelines, you probably ought to leave your helmets on the whole time.
Yeah, there was like the rumors that our freshman year, they had to beat us to go to the Sugar Bowl. And Tony Robbins was the quarterback.
Yeah.
And they were like, it was the same thing, like you're going off like, dude, just strap up because they'll throw batteries and stuff at you. It's like,
Not
what?
just whiskey bottles, but batteries, golf balls, and I guess more recently they throw mustard bottles and fruit.
Yeah.
But
So it's kind of weird when you're, having played in the last game in a couple different sports. It's like a surreal feeling, as not that many people get to win their last game, right? So most people go out
yeah,
losing, and then to be here in Rocky Top, and so I was able to I quickly got that out of my system though, because U2 was playing in not Chattanooga, whatever town. It was like halfway between Knoxville and Nashville.
maybe
And, Murfreesboro, right? And so we went there. We're like, so we like lose, we get our $10 or $20, however much we get after the game, right? Like in a 3-piece KFC box.
That's right. That's right.
Lukewarm, grab that, go. And we went and saw U2 after that concert. That night did not end so well. We wound up getting thrown in jail that night after the victory, but it's kind of another story.
Did you at least make it to the concert?
We made it to the concert, made it to Exit In after the concert, made it to Steak and Egg, and then we dined and dashed Steak and Egg. And I think me and this guy Miles Millick, I think we're the only people who were ever caught dining and dashing from Steak and Egg.
Well, I don't know if it make you feel any better, but I think that Steak and Egg is gone by the way of
one of
progress.
the towers, right? It's one of the towers.
That's right. That's right. By chance, was it the Rattle and Hum tour? Do you
It was
remember?
the Rattle and Hum tour.
Oh, I remember that.
Amazing. It was just an amazing concert. And like U2 was so big at that moment. And that's another thing, circling back to the whole music thing. If you recall, Rites of Spring and the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, absolutely. And do you remember something else that happened with one of our teammates? Wally? No?
What was Wally the drummer who stick his?
No, we'll talk afterwards, but I don't want to talk about that right now.
All right.
Here's what I want to talk about, Steve, in all seriousness. We've got a few more minutes. When you're an athlete and you're used to competing on and off the field, grades, sport, whatever it is, that really never goes away fully through your life.
No.
So when your football career ended and you graduated, now you're looking at your whatever your next job or profession is going to be, that athlete is still inside somewhere. So over in your 20s and 30s, what did you do to satisfy that competition or that need to compete? Or did it remain with you?
No, it remains through and through. It's whether you're competing in ping pong or you're competing for job or sales.
Mhm.
I mean, you're just competing and you just get up and you compete every day. Um, I played when I moved back to Chicago, I played basketball for like 3 or 4 nights a week, and
Mhm.
there were some like good leagues, and there was always some sort of pickup, and we played softball, or we were always kind of playing some sort of sport, and then
Mhm.
it kind of transitioned into golf. So we were always doing something. One of my job for a long time out of school also though was trading on one of the floor at the exchange, at the SIBO,
Mhm.
Chicago Board of Options Exchange, and that was we all competed um, for a livelihood, right? And so it was like for every day for about 12 years, I went down there and we would compete to see if we could make money and so forth. And it was just a different type of competition. And there would be some stuff where there was some like pushing and shoving and, verbal
Mhm.
intimidation. It was awesome.
Well, there's that athlete. All right, something I should have mentioned earlier. I wanna get your view, and I've asked a few guys recently about this. I'm going to take you back to living in the towers. It's a Saturday night. Barry Goheen has just beaten another team with a last minute buzzer beater. So, what usually took place on Saturday nights in the towers after a big Vanderbilt home basketball win?
Well, we were on the ball hall number 5, right? But we had Goo Baby, we had everybody coming up there, right? There was some thumping bass, boom, 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 right? And
Jeff Mays was usually one of the
Jeff
guys on
May DJing it up, right?
there.
Getting it going. People drinking, what's up, high fiving. I mean, that era was just incredible, beating Indiana, North Carolina. I
Mhm.
mean, and there was the guy, the ticket guy, God bless his soul, he would always keep a few tickets because you had to pick up your student tickets like right by, I think it was Surratt or something.
Mhm. Yep.
And he would always be like, I'm like, wait, you got like tickets for football players? And he's like, yeah, here, like you need a couple. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, like, because I would have, it was so hard to go see a game, I mean, unless you had like recruits that you were bringing. But anyhow, that was just such an amazing time. And I actually saw Barry Goheen and Will Purdue in Chicago at a basketball game, and it was really, really fun to catch up to those guys.
Yeah, those games, the memorial was so special during that time period. There was not a seat. I don't know if the younger crowd would appreciate this, but there was not a seat to be found in the student section.
No,
And there would be there 45 minutes to an hour before the tip off.
here's the yeah, exactly. And here's another. So I was a Sigma Chi, and people ask, "I were you Sigma Chi?" I'm like, to get dates, to get some girls. And
Mhm.
anyways, but the Sigma Chi house was right by Memorial Gymnasium,
Mhm.
and as you said, that everything was sold out. They had a parking garage; it was tough to get in and out to. And we would kind of hustle, bouncing or doing whatever to make some bucks or whatever.
Mhm.
I think it was John Wanzing and myself. We were going to the game. And we're like looking around. We're like, dude, we got like 15 parking uh, spaces in our
Mhm.
fraternity lot. I go, we could probably get like $20 a spot, right? So all of a sudden, we just started like redirecting the people in the line to like park in our parking lot, right?
Mhm.
And so the first week, we get like there's a couple of us, and then we would go out to it wasn't Dalt's. What was the place right by Wendy's that was the Cooker? West End Cooker?
The cooker,
And we
West End.
go there and just like watch the game and like live like kings with all our illegal parked money.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
That's awesome.
then the next week, people heard about it. So then we went from parking 15 spots to, you know, 20 spots. And we were like, parking cars and the other
Mhm.
sororities and fraternities. And by the time it was a good haul. And Brock Williams busted us one time. He's like, you
Oh
can't do
boy.
this. Like, what are we doing? Like,
They
so
had to have something to pick on. They had to find something. Cause what was it like being in a fraternity and trying to maintain school and play top level football.
Yeah, it
How
was
did-
it was a little academically challenging. It, required a lot of time. I thought it was I loved it for the distraction of, like we said, we're working 40 to 60 hours,
Mhm.
and and we were competing for those 40 or 60 hours too, right? I mean, whether it was for playing time, lifting, getting in shape, so it's a little bit of a pressure cooker, right? And I personally just kind of needed a little break to kind of get away and hang out with some guys who, I don't know, would ask me stupid football questions or whatever, but like, it was just a break away.
Yeah, I mean, it was a whole different friend group. It was just
Yeah.
regular dudes. I remember Andy Baker was a fraternity guy. Who else during our time? Were
Yeah,
there any
there
other
was
guys?
Steve Shooty,
Mhm.
Fred, something or other. And there were some guys who were Fidels, and then like Eric Jones, they were Kappa Alpha Psi,
Right.
um, and there was who was it, Greg? There were a couple Fidels. So there was a spattering of guys who were kind of like in houses and so forth. And I think that was just a little, I think it was just a break from
Yeah,
the
it
grind.
it does seem like it would have been a good break. It was just a whole different vibe, a whole different group for you to kind of hang with for a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, I got a couple more minutes with you, and you've shared so many life lessons that it sounds like you took from your sports days that you kept in your professional life. But I know that you have a family. I know you've got a lot of things that are going on in your life. So I want to kind of come modern with share a little bit about what are you doing these days professionally, talk about your family a little bit, and just kind of
Sure.
catch folks up with you.
Sure. So I've been I went from engineering into kind of financial services, prime brokerage and trading. I traded for about 15 years on the couple of different exchanges. And that was literally like trading places, like pushing and shoving, scream and shout. That's all transitioned into technology. And so I've kind of made that transition into working with what are called like market data feeds, um, floor access and different things. So it's a real kind of technical sale. But I work with kind of hedge funds, professional trading groups, and help them set up their kind of business and understand how they want to get reported. So there's kind of a number of different things. When I'm not doing that, I've raised 3 kids. My oldest, you'll appreciate this, she's in law school. She's just finishing up her first year.
Very good.
She's at UIC. She's a real character. She did a little Second City improv out of school. And so that's kind of an interesting legal tactic. Somebody who's been doing improv. Jack is our son. He's out in Denver, and he's a environmental graduate. And then my youngest, who's not so little guy, was our athlete. He's at Lake Forest College, and he had a really nice high school career. And plays at a D3 school called Lake Forest College. We're not really sure. We're trying to evaluate whether he should continue playing football, or is it time for him to kind of start getting on with his life, making the academics a focus. So everybody crosses that bridge at some point.
Has he had his talk like you did with Watson? Has that come up yet?
Yeah, so he, through the COVID years, he took a year off, and he went through that, came back. And because there was an overlap, this is a D3 school of 2,400 kids at the school. They had 125 kids on their football team. 125.
Whoa.
There was like 6 deep almost at every position. It was crazy.
Wow.
And so we went through. That was because they got this eligibility. All these kids were eligible. They still wanted to play. They took their time at school. But it's always been a joy watching your kids play and excel. It's something that you really appreciated. So that was really fun.
I asked this of Brad last week. He's 2 of his children competed and one still competes in football. Are you more nervous watching your children compete, or were you more nervous when you played?
Yeah, and actually too, well, one, how many concussions in 4 years did we have at the Vanderbilt football program from like 1985 to 89?
Right.
One.
Yeah.
Andy
Andy Mack.
Mack was the only guy. He had like a series of bad ones, right?
Yeah.
And so bad,
Yeah.
like, hey, we're going to put you on offense so you don't have to hit your head so much.
That's right. That's
Right.
right.
You have to check with him today. So, yeah, it would be. And they're, concussion protocol, the whole 9 yards. We coached, through it. And it was like all these times when you had a headshot, you saw a flash, snot knocked out of you, knocked the guy's helmet off, whatever. All those things are like concussion, right? And like, and every aspect. So it's really from a different perspective of having watched that, and in how much, you just, went to the sideline for a little bit and got back in, right?
Have you
I'll tell
looked?
one funny story of one time
Yeah.
when I was definitely concussed. We were playing Old Miss, supposed to like settle down in between two linebackers, and Eric Jones led me into the weak side linebacker. And this dude hit me so hard. I was leaning forward trying to catch the ball, and I imagined that I wound up on my ass, like on my back. And I remember getting up, going like, I just got to make it to my sideline and go like, give me a second, I'm going to compose myself, and then I'll get back in there. But did knock the shit out of me.
Yeah. And we didn't even really call it that back then. It was getting your bell rung or seeing stars. The word concussion was not really a.
Your buddies are like, laughing their ass off because you just got drilled so bad. They're like, oh,
Yeah, because you're looking out of your ear hole now. Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you for spending some time with us tonight. I really have enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, this was a great time. Thank you for organizing it. Appreciate the time, and I want to say hello to everybody. If I didn't mention your name, it's because we were all concussed, and I only remember half the names that I actually do. Hopefully, I remember your face, but it was really good times.
That's funny. Let me, Steve, don't go anywhere, but I got a couple of announcements, and I want to talk to you after we're done.
Okay.
I've been putting in the discussion in our thread that we're starting to do Zoom meetup groups with the guys who played together as teammates. And there's two of them that are organized so far. We've got Coach Woody, Era players that are going to meet up this Thursday night. Then we got Coach Pan-Coast players in a couple of weeks. I'm going to try to get each of our groups, Coach Brown, Leonardo, et cetera. So just hang in there. I'm going to get to them. We're going to do them on Thursday nights in the upcoming weeks. And keep coming back on Tuesday nights because we've got a whole host of Commodores coming up in the next 8 to 10 weeks. I've already got them lined up. So thank you all for who keeps showing up, and these conversations are just fantastic. Anchor down.